They gave me the worst room on the family trip. They didn't know I owned the hotel. I decided to keep quiet and observe the annual family reunion. It was a tradition my mother insisted on maintaining, though for me, it always meant a weekend of constant comparisons and cutting remarks. This year would be no different, except that the luxurious hotel where we would stay was now my property thanks to the inheritance my grandfather had secretly left me 6 months earlier. When I arrived at the lobby of Hotel Miramar, my heart was beating fast. I watched as my sister Lucia, the family favorite, was welcomed with hugs and smiles by everyone. No one noticed my presence until my mother saw me and frowned. "I thought you wouldn't come, Carmen," she said, not bothering to hide her disappointment. "I wouldn't miss our family reunion for anything in the world," I replied with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. My brother-in-law, Roberto, Lucia's husband, looked me up and down, evaluating my outfit as always. "Seems like the graphic design business isn't so lucrative after all," he commented with a mocking smile. If only they knew. My small company was now a respected agency with international clients, but I never bothered to correct their assumptions. What hurt me most was the secret I kept. This 5-star hotel, with its impeccable gardens and ocean view, now belonged to me. Grandfather had always seen something in me that the rest of the family ignored. "We distributed the rooms," my mother announced as manager Miguel handed out the keys. My sister and her husband received the presidential suite with ocean view. My parents, an executive suite. My cousins, deluxe rooms. And me, Carmen, you'll stay in room 108 on the first floor, the room next to the laundry, the smallest and noisiest room in the hotel. Everyone exchanged glances, some with shame, others with poorly disguised amusement. Miguel, the manager, seemed uncomfortable. "Ma'am, we could look for another option for the young lady," he began, but my mother interrupted him. "It's not necessary. Carmen is simple. She doesn't need luxuries." I saw how Miguel looked at me with concern. He knew who I really was, but we had agreed to keep my position as owner secret during this family reunion. "It's fine, Miguel," I said calmly. "Room 108 will be perfect." I took the key and headed to the elevator, feeling my family's eyes on my back. On the way, I heard my cousin Daniela whisper, "As always, Carmen settles for the leftovers." The room was exactly as I remembered. Small, with a window overlooking the service area and the constant noise of the laundry machines. I sat on the single bed and took a deep breath. I wasn't here to confront my family or to humiliate them by revealing I was the owner. I was here to understand why they treated me this way. Why, after 30 years, they still saw me as the least valuable. That night, during the welcome dinner at the hotel restaurant, my family occupied the best table. My chair was partially hidden behind a column. While everyone ordered the most expensive dishes on the menu, I ordered a simple salad. "Can't you afford something better, Carmen?" my father asked with a mixture of mockery and pity. "We can treat you if you want." "The salad is fine. Thank you," I replied, maintaining my dignity. The conversation revolved, as always, around Lucia's achievements. Her recent promotion at the bank, her new house in the exclusive neighborhood. "Our Lucia always knew what she wanted," my mother said proudly. "Not like Carmen, who wasted her life with this drawing business." The head chef approached our table to personally greet the guests. Upon seeing me, he made a small bow that didn't go unnoticed. "Was the salad to your liking, Miss Carmen?" he asked respectfully. "Delicious, Antonio." "Thank you," I replied. My family looked at me strangely. "You know the chef?" Lucia asked, surprised. "We've crossed paths before," I replied vaguely. The truth was that I had personally hired Antonio 3 months earlier, after grandfather left me the hotel. The night progressed, and with each glass of wine, the comments directed at me became more cutting. The secret I kept was weighing on me more and more. Should I reveal the truth? What would they do if they knew that every insult, every humiliation occurred under my own roof? Miguel approached discreetly. "Miss Carmen, there's an urgent matter that requires your attention," he said quietly. "What could be so urgent for Carmen?" Roberto mocked. "Did they run out of colored pencils?" I stood up calmly, ignoring the comment. "Excuse me. I'll be back in a moment." In the private office, Miguel looked concerned. "Miss, I can't continue watching how they treat you. You're the owner of this place." "I know, Miguel, but I need to understand something before revealing the truth. There's a family wound that's been open for a long time." I looked out the window at the dark sea, and I think I'm close to discovering why my family hates me so much. I returned to the table where my family continued enjoying exclusive desserts. My cousin Javier was in the middle of a story about his recent purchase of a sports car when my Aunt Elena, always the most observant, asked me, "What did that employee want with you? Carmen? Do you know him from somewhere?" I felt all eyes fix on me. Just a confusion with the reservation, I replied casually, taking a sip of water. Typical of Carmen, Lucia murmured to Roberto loud enough for me to hear. Always causing problems. That night, when everyone retired to their luxurious rooms, I stayed in the deserted lobby. Miguel approached with a cup of tea. Your grandfather would be proud of you, he said quietly. Don Ernesto always knew you would be the one to best care for his legacy. I smiled melancholically. My grandfather was the only one who saw something special in me. Sometimes I wonder if he wasn't mistaken. Miguel shook his head firmly. In the few months you've been running the hotel, you've implemented more improvements than any previous owner. The staff respects you. Don Ernesto wasn't mistaken. The next day, during the breakfast buffet, I noticed that several staff members greeted me with disguised respect. My family was too busy serving themselves the most exclusive delicacies to notice. Carmen, are you only eating that? My mother asked, looking at my plate of fruit and yogurt. That's why you're so thin. You look sick. I'm perfectly healthy, Mom, I replied. I simply prefer to start the day with something light. Roberto burst out laughing. Light? Actually economical. I bet you calculate every penny you spend. The comment provoked laughter at the table. I took a deep breath and focused on my breakfast. It wasn't the moment for revelations. The morning passed with activities. A tour of the hotel, time at the pool, massages at the spa. Of course, my parents had organized everything so that Lucia and her husband received the best treatments. For me, there were only leftovers. I'm sorry, but it seems there's no more space for the premium massage, my mother informed me with false disappointment. You'll have to settle for the basic massage. Later, I discovered that she had deliberately canceled my reservation for the premium treatment, claiming it would be a waste on Carmen. During lunch, the conversation turned to a topic: Grandfather Ernesto's inheritance. I'll never understand why Dad sold the hotel before dying, my mother commented, looking around nostalgically. It was his greatest pride. He certainly received an irresistible offer, my father replied. Too bad we never knew who bought it. Lucia sighed dramatically. If the hotel were still ours, we could stay for free. We could even give Carmen a decent room, she added, as if she were doing me a favor. I suppressed a smile. If only they knew the truth about the inheritance and the family secret I was about to discover. That afternoon, while my parents and Lucia enjoyed a yacht tour, I slipped into my grandfather's old office, now my private office. Miguel was waiting for me with a box of documents. I found what you asked for, Miss Carmen, he said, placing the box on the table. These are all your grandfather's personal documents related to your family. I began reviewing letters, photographs, and diaries. Among them, I found a yellowed envelope dated 15 years ago. It contained a letter from my mother to my grandfather that left me breathless. Dad, you have to understand that Carmen isn't like us. She never was. If you continue treating her as your favorite, you'll only hurt her. She doesn't have what it takes to succeed in this family. Lucia is the one who should inherit the hotel someday. My hands were shaking. I continued reading similar correspondence over the years. Letters where my own mother tried to convince grandfather that I didn't deserve his attention or his inheritance. Letters where she described my supposed failures and weaknesses. A handwritten note from my grandfather, never sent, responded, Isabel, it saddens me to see how you treat your own daughter. Carmen has a spirit and intelligence that you can't even see. Someday, all of you will realize the mistake you've made. The discovery hit me like a cold wave. It wasn't just envy or family rivalry. My own mother had systematically orchestrated my marginalization within the family. Are you all right, miss? Miguel asked, concerned about my silence. No, I replied honestly, but I will be. I continued reading and discovered something even more disturbing. My father and Roberto had tried to manipulate grandfather into selling them the hotel at a reduced price shortly before his death. Their plan had failed when grandfather, suspicious of their intentions, decided to secretly leave it to me. A knock on the door interrupted my investigation. It was Daniela, my cousin. Carmen, what are you doing here? This area is only for authorized people, she said, looking curiously at the documents scattered on the table. Miguel intervened quickly. The young lady was looking for information about the hotel's activities. Miss Daniela? Daniela didn't seem convinced. Her eyes narrowed, examining the office. Isn't it strange that they let you into the private office? They wouldn't even let us take a look. Maybe I'm not as insignificant as everyone thinks, I replied, holding her gaze. Something changed in her expression. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of doubt in her eyes. You were always grandfather's favorite, she said slowly. We all knew it, though no one would admit it. When Daniela left, I knew my secret wouldn't last much longer. The family would start to suspect, and I would have to make a decision: continue enduring humiliations or reveal that I, the despised Carmen, was now the owner of the empire they all coveted. That night, during the formal dinner, the storm that had been brewing since my arrival came, and with it, the opportunity for revenge I never knew I wanted. The gala dinner was the central event of our family reunion. The hotel's main hall had been decorated with fresh flowers, candles, fine crystals, and linen tablecloths. I arrived deliberately late, wearing a simple but elegant black dress that I had designed myself. "Finally you appear," my mother said irritably. "We were about to order without you." I took my place at the spot they had assigned me, again the least favorable at the table. Roberto was already half drunk, bragging about his recent real estate investments. "I bought 3 properties on the coast last month," he boasted. "If I play my cards right, I could even buy a hotel like this someday." Lucia smiled proudly. "My husband has business vision, unlike other family members who are content drawing logos." My father raised his glass. "To Roberto and Lucia, the true pride of this family." Everyone toasted while I kept my glass on the table. No one seemed to notice during the first course. Daniela was watching me intensely. Finally, she spoke. "Carmen, I saw you today in the hotel's private office. You seemed very comfortable there." A sudden silence fell over the table. All eyes turned to me. "What were you doing in restricted areas?" my father asked, frowning. I took a sip of water. "I was investigating some things about the hotel." "Why would you do that?" my mother asked. "It's not like you're going to buy one." Roberto let out a thunderous laugh. "Carmen, owning a hotel? That would be funny. She can't even afford a decent room." It was then that Miguel approached our table with a bottle of exclusive champagne. "Miss Carmen, the champagne you requested for your family," he said. My mother blinked in confusion. "We didn't order any." "It's complimentary," he said. "From me." I interrupted calmly. "From you?" Lucia almost choked. "How could you afford a bottle that probably costs more than your monthly rent?" Miguel served the champagne while I maintained my composure. The tension at the table was palpable. "There are many things about me you don't know," I said simply. My father looked at me suspiciously. "What are you talking about, Carmen? If you have something to say, say it." I contemplated my options. I could reveal my secret now, humiliate them as they had humiliated me for years. Revenge would be served on a silver platter. But as I observed their faces, something changed inside me. I didn't want to become like them. "I just wanted to make a kind gesture," I replied, "to celebrate that we're together as a family, despite everything." The surprise on their faces was evident. They didn't expect generosity from me after how they had treated me. The dinner continued. But something had subtly changed. Daniela looked at me with intrigue, as if she were reconsidering who I really was. During dessert, Lucia began talking about grandfather's inheritance. I never understood why grandfather sold the hotel in secret. It was the family patrimony. "Maybe because he knew some would try to take advantage," I replied, looking directly at my father and Roberto. "What are you insinuating?" Roberto jumped, suddenly defensive. "Nothing," I said calmly. "Just that grandfather was more astute than everyone thought." My father looked at me with a mixture of suspicion and nervousness. "Carmen, if you know something about the hotel sale, you should share it with the family." "Now I'm part of the family?" I asked. How curious. A few hours ago, I was the poor relative who didn't even deserve a decent room. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My mother tried to change the subject, but I continued. "You know, grandfather told me many things. I spent hours with him while you were busy with your important lives. He told me about his plans for the hotel, about what he wanted for his legacy." "And what did he say?" Lucia asked, unable to hide her curiosity. "He told me that a family business is like a mirror. It reflects the values of those who run it." I made a significant pause. "And that you always have to be careful with deceptive appearances." Roberto slammed his fist on the table. "Enough riddles. If you have something to say it clearly." At that moment, the hotel's general manager approached our table. "Excuse the interruption. I just wanted to make sure everything was to your liking. Especially for you, Miss Carmen." My family observed uncomfortably the preferential treatment I was receiving. "Everything is perfect, Javier." "Thank you," I replied with a smile. "Why the hell do they treat you like you're someone important?" my father demanded to know. I took a deep breath. I hadn't planned to reveal my secret that night, but the situation was escalating. I had to make a decision. "Because they know my work," I replied. "They simply respect what I do." "Drawing logos?" Roberto mocked. I design corporate identity for international companies, I corrected. My agency has clients on 3 continents and 30 employees. Last year, our revenue exceeded $3 million. The surprise on their faces was immediate. My mother almost dropped her glass. You're lying, Lucia accused. If you were so successful, you would have bragged about it. Unlike some, I don't need constant validation from others, I replied. And there's a difference between humility and allowing myself to be treated like trash. If you're so successful, why did you accept staying in that horrible room? My mother asked, genuinely confused. Because I wanted to see how far you would take it, I replied honestly. I wanted to understand if there was any limit to the contempt you feel for me. My words fell like slabs on the table. For the first time, I saw shame on some of their faces. Not on all, but it was a start. Carmen, my father began, but I interrupted him. I'm not finished, I said firmly. For years I endured your comments, your pitying looks, your constant contempt, all because I didn't follow the path you considered appropriate, because I chose to create instead of destroy, to build instead of manipulate. My hands were shaking, but my voice remained steady. It was as if decades of silence had finally found their voice. Grandfather taught me that a person's value isn't in what they possess or the appearances they maintain, but in how they treat others. He saw something in me that you could never see because you were too busy comparing me to your idea of success. The silence that followed was deafening. I could see emotions crossing their faces: disbelief, shame, confusion, and in some cases, the beginning of an uncomfortable realization. If this is true, my father finally said, why did you never say anything? Would you have listened? I asked. Or would you have found another way to minimize my achievements? He had no answer for that. We all knew the truth. The dinner ended in uncomfortable silence. As the others retired, Daniela stayed behind and sat beside me. I always knew you were different, she said quietly. Grandfather used to tell me to watch you, to learn from you. I never understood why, until now. Our eyes met in a moment of mutual understanding. Carmen, she continued, there's something more, isn't there? Something about this hotel and grandfather that you haven't said. I nodded slowly. And tomorrow, everyone will know. The next morning dawned with unusual clarity. From my modest room next to the laundry, I could hear the hum of the machines mixing with the birds' songs. I dressed carefully, choosing an ivory-tailored suit I reserved for special occasions. Today would undoubtedly be an occasion none of us would forget. During breakfast, the dynamics had subtly changed. My family watched me with a mixture of confusion and curiosity. The mockery had ceased, replaced by uncomfortable silence and furtive glances. My revelation the night before had shaken the foundations of the family hierarchy, but they still didn't know the whole truth. My mother was the first to try an approach. Carmen, dear, we didn't know your business was doing so well, she said with a tense smile. You should have told us. I tried, Mom, for years. My voice was calm, without a trace of bitterness. Every time I mentioned a new client or an important project, you changed the subject to talk about Lucia's achievements. My sister had the decency to blush. Well, the important thing is that now we know, my father intervened, adopting a conciliatory tone he had never used with me before. We're proud of you, of course. Roberto, however, maintained his skepticism. $3 million in annual revenue. That's impressive. If it's true, he commented, emphasizing the last part. Although revenue isn't the same as profit, of course. My profit margin last year was 28%, I replied without getting upset. After taxes. His expression transformed into a mixture of surprise and something that looked almost like respect. At 10 o'clock, Miguel approached our table. Miss Carmen, everything is ready for the meeting you requested. My family looked at me strangely. I organized a small presentation about the hotel's history, I explained, standing up. I thought it would interest you considering how important it was to grandfather. We headed to the main conference room, an elegant space with large windows offering panoramic ocean views. Inside, to my surprise, wasn't just the hotel's management team, but also an older, distinguished-looking man I recognized immediately. Arturo Mendez, my grandfather's lawyer. What does this mean, Carmen? My father asked, suddenly alarmed. Please, take your seats, I indicated, pointing to the front row of chairs. Once everyone was seated, I positioned myself in front of them. My heart was beating fast, but my voice remained steady. Thank you all for coming. As you know, this hotel was the crown jewel of Grandfather Ernesto's businesses. He built it from scratch, converting a small inn into one of the most prestigious establishments on the coast. I activated the projector, showing old photographs of the hotel in its early days. My family watched with a mixture of nostalgia and confusion. What you may not know, I continued, is what really happened to the hotel after his death. My mother tensed visibly. Grandfather sold the hotel before dying. We never knew to whom. That's not entirely accurate, Lawyer Mendez intervened, standing beside me. Don Ernesto didn't sell the hotel. He transferred it to a trust. A trust? My father repeated, frowning. Why weren't we informed? Because it wasn't relevant to you, Mendez replied with professional coldness. The trust had a single beneficiary. All eyes turned to me. I could see the pieces fitting together in their minds. It can't be, Lucia whispered. I nodded slowly. Grandfather left me the hotel. I've been the owner for 6 months. The silence that followed was absolute, as if even the air had stopped moving. The expressions ranged from disbelief to indignation, passing through the deepest shock. Roberto was the first to recover his voice. This is absurd. Why would he leave you? Precisely you, his most valuable possession. That's an excellent question, I replied, looking directly at my parents. And I think Mom might have some idea. My mother paled instantly. I don't know what you're talking about. I found your letters, Mom. The ones you wrote to Grandfather, trying to convince him that I didn't deserve his attention, or his inheritance. Several gasps were heard in the room. My mother seemed to have shrunk in her chair. I also found something else. I continued, signaling Miguel, who delivered a folder to each family member. The documents confirming that Dad and Roberto tried to manipulate Grandfather into selling them the hotel at a reduced price shortly before his death. My father opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were copies of emails, fraudulent purchase proposals, and false appraisals that underestimated the hotel's value. This is taken out of context, he stammered. No, it's not, Lawyer Mendez intervened. Don Ernesto showed me these documents. That's when he decided to modify his will and leave the hotel in trust to Carmen, the only person he truly trusted to preserve his legacy. Roberto stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. This is a conspiracy. You certainly manipulated the old man or the lawyer. You don't have what it takes to run a business like this. The results suggest otherwise, I replied calmly. In the 6 months since I took control, the hotel's revenue has increased 18%. Customer satisfaction has improved, and we've been nominated for 2 Hospitality Excellence Awards. Miguel nodded in confirmation. The management team present showed expressions of pride and respect. My mother seemed genuinely confused. If you're the owner, why did you accept staying in that horrible room? Why did you allow us to treat you like that? It was the question I'd been waiting for. Because I needed to understand, I replied, feeling emotion finally break my voice. I needed to comprehend if you really saw me as worthless, or if there was some deeper reason for your contempt. The tears threatened to flow, but I stayed strong. And what I discovered was even more painful than I imagined. It's not that you believed I had no value, it's that you feared what would happen if others saw my value, especially Grandfather. My mother lowered her gaze, unable to sustain mine. The letters show clearly, Mom. You couldn't stand that Grandfather loved me. You couldn't accept that he saw something special in me. Why? What did I do to deserve this? The silence that followed was broken by a muffled sob. It was my mother who seemed to have collapsed under the weight of decades of secrets. You were just like him, she finally murmured. You had the same look, the same way of seeing the world. When you were little, he used to say you were his living image, that you had his entrepreneurial spirit. She paused, breathing shakily. And I was always a disappointment to him. I was never smart enough, ambitious enough. When you appeared, with your creativity and determination, I saw how his eyes lit up when talking to you, in a way they never did with me. The revelation fell like a bomb in the room. Decades of resentment, of maternal jealousy, of a competition I never knew we were having. So you decided to make sure I never shone, I concluded, feeling a mixture of understanding and pain. You convinced the whole family that I was less, that my dreams weren't worth it. My mother didn't deny it. She couldn't. And you? I addressed my father. You saw a business opportunity. If I stayed marginalized from the family, I wouldn't be a threat to your plans with the hotel. My father seemed to have aged 10 years in the last few minutes. Lucia, meanwhile, remained silent, apparently processing everything she had just discovered about our family dynamics. It was then that I made the most important decision of all. Despite everything, I said finally, breaking the dense silence that had fallen over the room, I'm still part of this family. My words seemed to float in the air, unexpected and disconcerting for everyone present. We're not here for a settling of accounts, I continued. I could have humiliated you from the beginning, expelled you from the hotel, or treated you as you treated me, but that would only perpetuate the cycle of resentment that has poisoned this family for too long. My mother looked at me with red eyes, a mixture of shame and amazement on her face. When grandfather left me this hotel, I didn't completely understand why he did it. Now I know. It wasn't just about the business. It was about giving us a chance to heal. I walked to the large window that dominated the room, contemplating the sea that stretched before us. The same sea my grandfather contemplated every morning from his office. Grandfather left something else in the trust, I announced, turning to them. A letter that should be delivered to the family 6 months after I took possession of the hotel. That is, today. Lawyer Mendez nodded and took an envelope from his briefcase. He handed it to me solemnly. This is Don Ernesto's last wish, beyond the legal aspects, Mendez explained. He specifically requested that it be read in the presence of the entire family. My hands trembled slightly as I opened the envelope. I extracted the pages written in my grandfather's unmistakable handwriting and began reading aloud. Dear family, if you are hearing these words, it means Carmen has assumed her role as owner of Hotel Miramar, and the time has come for you to know my true reasons. This hotel represents my legacy, but a legacy is not just walls and business. A legacy is also the values we transmit to the generations that follow us. For years, I watched sadly as our family fragmented. I saw the contempt for Carmen, the person who, ironically, most resembles me in spirit and vision. Isabel, my dear daughter, always tried to prove her worth to me by competing with her own daughter. It wasn't necessary. I loved her for who she was, not for who she believed she should be to impress me. Roberto and Lucia built their lives on appearances and superficial ambitions. True success is not measured in properties or status, but in the integrity with which we live. I left the hotel to Carmen not only because I trust her ability to manage it, but because I trust her heart to heal our family's wounds. My last wish is that you use this revelation as an opportunity to reflect, to acknowledge past mistakes and build a future where mutual respect replaces contempt, where family love is stronger than individual ambitions. The hotel now legally belongs to Carmen, but spiritually belongs to all of you if you're willing to build a new family dynamic based on respect and acceptance. With eternal love, Ernesto. When I finished reading, several people in the room, including the hotel staff, had tears in their eyes. The silence that followed was charged with emotion, with realization, with truths denied for too long. My mother was the first to speak. All this time, she murmured. All this time competing with my own daughter, trying to prove something to a father who already loved me. She stood slowly, and to my surprise, approached me with a voice broken by emotion. Carmen, I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I was a terrible mother, blinded by my own insecurities. I saw in her eyes something I had never seen before, genuine recognition, vulnerability, and the beginning of deep regret. My father, meanwhile, seemed devastated. Your grandfather was right, he admitted almost to himself. I built my whole life trying to impress others, forgetting what really matters. Lucia remained seated, silent, with an indescribable expression. Finally, she stood and walked to me. I never understood why grandfather preferred you, she said slowly. Now I see. While I sought his approval, you sought his wisdom. While I wanted his money, you wanted his legacy. There was no hostility in her voice, just a sad acceptance. Roberto, however, didn't seem moved. He stood abruptly, his face red with indignation. And I suppose now we should feel guilty? That we should congratulate you for inheriting an empire you didn't build? He looked at Lucia, expecting her support, but she remained by my side. Roberto, I said calmly, the hotel is legally mine. That won't change. But what we do from here as a family depends on all of us. Lawyer Mendez cleared his throat discreetly. Actually, there's an additional codicil in the will that we haven't discussed yet. We all turned to him surprised. Don Ernesto established that, at Carmen's discretion, and solely at her discretion, she could assign minority stakes in the hotel to other family members, provided they demonstrated commitment to the values he defended. The revelation fell like a bomb. My family now looked at me with a mixture of hope and fear. I'm not seeking servility in exchange for shares, I clarified. What grandfather wanted was genuine reconciliation, not motivated by economic interest. What do you propose then? My father asked with a tone suggesting he was really willing to listen. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. the opportunity to transform pain into something constructive. I propose that we acknowledge the truth. We're a dysfunctional family that has caused real harm to its members. We can't erase the past, but we can decide how our future will be. I paused, looking each one in the eyes. The hotel will continue under my direction, but I'm willing to create a family council where everyone has a voice, not for operational decisions, but to ensure grandfather's legacy endures in philanthropic works, in community help, in the values he defended. And the shares? Roberto asked, still skeptical. They'll be earned over time, I replied firmly. Not with flattery to me, but with actions that demonstrate you truly understood grandfather's message. My mother approached and, with some hesitation, took my hands in hers. I don't deserve a second chance, she said, with tears running down her cheeks. But if you're willing to give me one, I promise I'll do everything possible to be the mother I should have been from the beginning. I felt my own tears surfacing. Years of longing for the maternal love I never received manifested in that moment of shared vulnerability. That's all I ever wanted, Mom, I replied softly. My father joined us, followed by Lucia. Roberto remained distant, observing the scene with a mixture of confusion and resentment. I need time to process all this, he said finally, heading to the door. Take all the time you need, I replied. The door will be open when you're ready. After Roberto left, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was as if an invisible weight had been lifted, allowing us to breathe freely for the first time in decades. The hotel staff, who had witnessed the entire scene, seemed deeply moved. Miguel discreetly began indicating they should leave us alone for this family moment. When we were left with just us and Lawyer Mendez, Lucia spoke. What do we do now? How do we begin to repair so much damage? With honesty, I replied. Grandfather used to say that family wounds only heal when they're exposed to air. We've kept this resentment in darkness for too long. My father nodded slowly. You have his wisdom, Carmen. You always have. Mendez stood up, collecting his briefcase. My work here is finished. Don Ernesto would be proud of how you handled this, Carmen. As he headed to the door, he added, By the way, there's an additional box of your grandfather's personal documents in my office. He mentioned you would find special interest in his diaries from the years he built the hotel. After Mendez left, my family and I remained in the room enveloped in a silence that, for the first time, wasn't uncomfortable, but contemplative. I never asked you about your business, my mother said suddenly. 3 million in revenue, 30 employees. You must be very good at what you do. I smiled slightly. I am, and I'd love to show you my work someday. I'd like that, she replied with a sincerity I'd never heard in her voice before. Lucia, always practical, intervened. So, what happens with the rest of the family weekend? Do we continue with the planned activities? I reflected for a moment. I think so, but with some changes. To start, I'm going to move to the suite that corresponds to me as owner. And what do we do about Roberto? My father asked. We'll give him space, I replied. Some need more time than others to accept the truth. That night, as the staff transferred my belongings to the hotel's main suite, I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Victory, yes, but not the petty victory of revenge, but the deeper one of having broken a toxic cycle. From my suite's terrace, I contemplated the same sea my grandfather loved. The salty wind caressed my face, bringing with it the aroma of new possibilities. You were right, grandfather, I murmured to the wind. True power isn't in humiliating those who hurt us, but in giving them the opportunity to change. At that moment, I remembered the words my grandfather used to say. A hotel is like a family, Carmen. Each room is different. Each guest brings their own story. The secret is making everyone feel valued, not despite their differences, but because of them. For the first time in my life, I felt our family had the opportunity to become the kind of hotel my grandfather envisioned. A place where each person could find their space without losing the sense of belonging to the whole. The road would be long and probably difficult. Some wounds would take years to heal completely, if they ever healed at all. But we had taken the first step, perhaps the most important one. We had looked truth in the eyes and decided not to look away. Jacurter Epilogue. 1 year has passed since that revealing family reunion. Hotel Miramar thrives under my direction, with changes grandfather would have approved. A scholarship program for young people from the local community, rooms adapted for people with disabilities, and a firm commitment to sustainability. My relationship with my family has evolved in ways I never imagined possible. My mother and I have a weekly lunch meeting where we slowly rebuild our relationship. She no longer seeks to compete with me, but to truly know me. Sometimes when we talk about design or business, I see in her eyes a glimmer of true maternal pride. Lucia was the biggest surprise. After reflecting on her life and values, she decided to return to university to study social work. I want to build something meaningful on my own merits, she told me. Her transformation has been profound and genuine. My father found an unexpected purpose in the hotel's community program, where he now coordinates activities for young entrepreneurs. He says that teaching them what he learned, including his mistakes, gives him a sense of purpose that money and status never provided. Roberto took 6 months to speak to me again. When he finally did, it was to ask me for a job opportunity. Not a free steak. He now runs the hotel's expansion department, where his ambition, properly channeled, is proving valuable. Room 108, where they housed me that first day, has been transformed into a small museum that tells the story of the hotel and its founder. At the end of the tour, visitors find grandfather's letter framed as a reminder that family businesses are, above all, about values and legacy. Every day, when I walk through the corridors of this hotel, which is both my inheritance and my responsibility, I feel grandfather's presence guiding me. I didn't choose to reveal my secret out of revenge, but for the possibility of healing it offered. And although the path hasn't been easy, the family we're building now is stronger and more authentic than the one we pretended to be. As the sign at the hotel entrance says, we don't build walls, but bridges. We don't offer rooms, but homes. That's the true secret of Hotel Miramar, and the most valuable legacy my grandfather left me. There are stories that aren't just stories. They're mirrors of life. If this one moved you, help us continue telling others that also deserve to be heard. Become a member. Join us. Thank you very much and have an excellent day.